I will never write a meal plan for my patients. I will tell them what is the best superfood out there and what 2 things should you avoid while doing keto. Let's begin with the best, and that is sardines. Yes, this can of sardines is got a jam-packed, nutrient-dense, best superfood out there, and it is usually not on the top 10 list of people's palate. I won't write that list of a prescribed menu for patients because of that. People arrive to the ketogenic diet and their maturity for trying foods they've never tried before grows along with their metabolism. When I start by sharing my superfood, let's use one of my friend Judy Cho's best infograms on sardines. And indeed, she packs in the reason why I have selected sardines as the #1 best superfood. Let's begin with the fats. The omega-3s, vitamin D, and vitamin E are 3 fats found in these cute little fishies packed in a can of sardines. That is then coupled with the best source of a couple minerals, especially when you're looking at the absorption rates. And that mineral that I'm going to point out is calcium. If you took 350 milligrams of calcium carbonate every day out of a capsule, you would not absorb as much calcium as you do in 1 can of sardines. That's right. When you combine these fats and the type of calcium found in that little can of sardines, the absorption of calcium tops the charts. It is, without a doubt, one of the reasons why we get to use the word nutrient dense when it comes to these cans of sardines. But my brag list for sardines doesn't end there. I move on to something much more practical, and that is that when going to record this video, I was able to find this can in my purse. And if you went to my car, there's actually one in my glove box. This functional, easy convenience is because a can of sardines doesn't need to be refrigerated. It can be in your life. And the reason that's really important is because it is a process of suppressing that craving and hunger that patients get when they are trying to reprogram how to eat better. The portion control comes with that can, the low cost is involved, and it's through that lack of overdosing on sardines. I have never had a patient overdose on sardines that the highest functional level for sardines wins in this case. Even if you argue with me on the nutrient density and the functionality of a can of sardines, it's going to be hard to beat when I review what happens to people's metabolisms when they eat sardines. This especially is important for the patients who have insulin resistance. They've had years and years of excessive blood sugar. They've had a very poor production of ketones. And when we look at people who do a sardine fast only, I had the opportunity actually to do this with 200 students in a recent class that I led. Most of the folks in that class had insulin resistance. They were in the class because they were trying to reduce their blood sugars. They were trying to produce ketones better. And as we look at what happened to this one student, it is a reflection of what happened to most. Here is where that patient started eating sardines. Prior to eating sardines, the average blood sugar that they had in the mornings was around 100. This had happened for weeks on end. Eating only sardines led to the next day dropping that glucose down to 70, and by the 3rd day, dropping that glucose down to a mid-55. The other match for that was a striking rise in their ketone production. This, again, wasn't just in this patient, but in most of the people who had insulin resistance. As they started that Sunday eating only sardines, their body did something different than it would typically do if they were doing a water-only fast. In a water-only fast, they are eating nothing. And although their insulin gradually decreases, they really have to empty out all of that glucose in their storage tank, called their liver, before their body will really begin to make ketones. Well, that's what makes fasting really hard for those folks with insulin resistance. Their production of ketones is delayed. In this case, they were eating sardines. So they did decrease their insulin, Eating only protein and this high fat didn't shut off their insulin production, but really lowered it significantly, especially in this population of patients. So at the same time, they are swallowing that fat, swallowing that protein, and their liver is making an abundant amount of ketones. So over those 72 hours, they were able to lower the blood sugar. At the same time, they were able to plunge out a high production of ketones, something they had not seen their bodies do in a water fast for many attempts. Throughout the rest of the week, they continued to have this burst in their metabolism by doing that 3 days of sardines. And then we did a water-only fast. And unlike their previous water-only fasts, their production of ketones was much higher after that sardine burst. So my number one superfood is really hard to take off the top of the list, and that is sardines. The two things I recommend not doing is I ask patients not to focus on high fiber foods. These high fiber foods do a lot of inflammatory problems inside their gut, and we are working at healing their gut. So I get those high fiber foods off the menu. The other thing I remove from the menu is seed oils. They are a high fat, but they are a fat filled with inflammation, and I find this causes more harm than it does good. Stick with the sardines. I did that for a whole week. Check this out. I challenge you to join me. See you there.